everyone, and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Show. This is where we talk about one thing: how to build a business that creates value, not just revenue. Because revenue is a byproduct, value is the objective. And if you're a serious operator, you already know that buyers don't pay for effort, they pay for systems, predictability, and scalability. And that's where today's episode is different. We're stepping into healthcare, but not from the clinical side. We're looking at a pharmaceutical sales franchise model built on territory ownership, provider relationships, and structured execution inside a regulatory industry. Because most people don't understand this. You don't need to be a provider to participate in healthcare, but you do need a system. So today we're joined by Barry Patel, the co-founder of Galt Pharmaceuticals and the Galt Phranchise System. This model is designed to give operators access to FDA-approved products, protected territories, and a structured path into pharmaceutical sales. So the real question is simple: can the model create predictable revenue, repeatable execution, and a transferable asset? And that's exactly what we're going to break down today. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into it, if you don't mind. What is that problem in the healthcare market that originally led you to build Galt Pharmaceuticals?
Well, I tell you what, Joe, we could spend hours talking about all the problems in healthcare, so we're not going to break them all down. But the one that we are really out there looking to solve or address anyway, first of all, pharmaceutical products, great trusted pharmaceutical products are going off the market. Manufacturers just stop making them when there's less demand for them. And these are great generic drugs that had great value in the 80s, 90s, even the 2000s, but yet they're going away because there's newer, shinier objects by pharma companies. And so that's the first problem that we're trying to address, is bring these drugs that can meet unmet clinical needs. I'm a pharmacist by background, so is my co-founder and partner, Wade Smith. He's a pharmacist, and we really believe that there are products that need to be brought back. So that's the first thing. The second thing, in the pharmaceutical industry, the way that they distribute products and get products out to the market is very inefficient. So that's a big problem. It's a very centralized approach that loses connection down at the local level. And so our model, so we have two entities within our organization: the pharmaceutical company model that brings the products, but then the distribution model, if you want to call it that, the franchise system that actually gets them to these local communities, to patients that really need them through a much more localized community approach through entrepreneurs. And so that's kind of a problem right now that we're trying to really address through our system.
I love that. So it's not necessarily about delivering care. You're driving awareness. You're driving access, really, is what it sounds like, more than anything else, through distribution of relationships.
That's right. That's right. It all comes down to relationships at the end of the day. Within healthcare, patients are really craving that again. We've become a system that's so disconnected from the patient. And so I think by bringing local entrepreneurs, local sales-minded professionals, or local independent pharmacy owners that understand that, that's what we're able to really leverage, is the relationships all the way around.
I love that. So what made you decide to franchise the model instead of scaling it through corporate growth?
Sure. So the pharma industry for years obviously has been built under corporate growth, funded through private equity or public funding through going public, and armies of sales folks going out there. So myself and my partner, we have been either within the pharmaceutical industry or worked with them. My previous company that I owned and sold basically did work with pharma industry. And we saw a lot of the inefficiencies there. And so when we first started the pharma company, so we don't want to go down that same road. We don't want to go into, it's an inefficient model. It's an 80-20 model, right? The Pareto principle. 20% of your sales is going to be driven by, 80% of your sales is going to be driven by 20% of your sales rep. And we couldn't afford to kind of keep on 80%. So the model of franchising is based on skin in the game, right? You are your owner and operator. You just need, obviously, products and Playbook and systems, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But that's the main reason that we believe in the power of entrepreneurism and the power of entrepreneurs to really innovate within a system, though. It has to be within a system, especially in healthcare, because of the compliance and regulatory that we have to deal with as a pharma company.
Totally agree. I mean, corporate growth traditionally is going to require your capital, time, effort, and energy. Franchise growth requires systems, to your point, but
Mm-hmm.
it gives the capability for the system to be even stronger and grow faster with less capital for you because you're diluting it across your franchise owners so that they have skin in the game. And hopefully, there's a bigger than 20% that's driving more than 80%
That's right.
as a result.
That's right. And if you think about it, that's the capital that's needed to fund these sales forces come from, private equity or other places. In our case, it actually comes from those entrepreneurs. They're kind of partners with us, right? Because they're the ones buying their dirt, their territories to really build their business around there. So we're taking that to really fund the company for future products and things like that. So we're not building a business around franchise fees. We're building it around those entrepreneurs that are driving our product sale.
Totally agree. But franchise partners is the way I like to phrase it, not just necessarily franchisees, franchise
Mm-hmm.
partners. So I
Mm-hmm.
love the fact that you have that same mentality.
Mm-hmm.
For someone that is hearing this for the first time, what exactly is the Galt Phranchise System?
Okay. I mentioned the pharmaceutical company. That's a separate company that has a relationship with a franchise system. So the pharma company owns assets, owns drugs, prescription products, or licenses them in. And then the franchise system is the system that we've built across the U.S., 500 territories that are broken down based upon demographics and number of healthcare providers and pharmacies, equally weighted across the country. And basically, those zip codes are available for an entrepreneur to acquire exclusive rights to those products that I mentioned through the relationship with Galt Pharmaceuticals. And the system is built with a ton of training, as you can imagine. So this training is the core of the system. So franchisee, once they come on board, they get onboarded, they get educated, they get trained, certified on the products, but also the system. We have IT and data capabilities to be able to give them targeting data to know who to go after, and then a very strong, comprehensive playbook to be able to for them to know how do I really get out there and build these relationships, and who do I build the relationships under the Galt sales process. We take care of everything else from the supply chain to the FDA, the regulatory, everything that you would need to be a pharma company. Galt takes care of that, and the system is really there as an entrepreneur to do the relationships, as we mentioned, with the healthcare providers and the independent pharmacies within their network or within their territory.
I love it. That's what separates a lot of franchise brands out there is and gives you the capacity to scale very quickly because
Mm-hmm.
the franchisee, the franchise partners got the territory, they got to develop the relationships with the providers, execute the product promotion, and y'all taking care of the back end, the access, the compliance stuff, the infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. So that's fantastic. That's a great marriage / partnership that ensures that both people win together.
Well, as you can imagine, the pharma industry, it's not easy to just get into, right? If somebody was in, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, they couldn't just say, okay, I want to start my own company and have some products and then just distribute them locally. That's a problem that we solve as a company, continuously looking for the product, making sure they stay on the market, manufacturing is overseen and quality assurance, as well as the compliance to how it's being promoted and having the right guardrails in place to ensure that the franchise partners are actually promoting in a compliant way. So I think that's the tough part for anybody. They don't want to invent products and build something from scratch. They'd rather come into a system, and that's kind of where franchising builds that system.
Love it. I love it. Well, I'm sure there's a multitude of different answers for this particular question, but I am curious, why is now the
Mm-hmm.
right time for a model like this in the healthcare space?
So I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. Within the healthcare space, it's becoming so impersonal, and so bringing a little bit of that back to those local communities, especially from the pharmaceutical and relationships. But there's a lot of sales-minded healthcare professionals that are just frustrated. I mean, they've been with big companies, they're getting laid off, and they're looking to build their own business. They have a little bit of wealth that they can invest in something for themselves, invest in themselves. We always call it bet on yourself. So now is a great time to bet on yourself. We've got other franchisees within our system that are independent pharmacy owners, and they have done well over the years. And but it's so challenging today. So to build a separate business that's complementary to their independent pharmacy, it's great timing for them too. I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years now, and I've always believed that the best time to build a business in bad times, when the economy is bad, and things are unstable right now, and things are, there's a lot of unknowns out there. So I think that, combined with the fact that there are a lot of unmet needs in healthcare and addressing some of those inefficiencies, I think somebody that really has that drive, this is the time for them to really make that decision to say, I want to be part of a solution, as well as gain value. It's about money too, to make revenue from that.
Totally agree. Timing's not always about trends. It's about access gaps, and in this case, provider awareness of distribution efficiency. Those things are not going to go away. That just creates an ongoing opportunity for the operators who could execute.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I know you've touched on it a couple of times, but would love to deep dive a tad bit further. What are the inefficiencies that the current system with Galt solves?
So the current ways that pharmaceuticals are being promoted, pharma companies typically give a rep that is part of a territory 200 to 300 targets to call on per month, right? They're going out there and not really building deep relationships. It's really just, okay, I gotta hit all of them because I gotta get the word out. But not really following through on, did the patients that are being prescribed the drug actually get the medication? And so what we've done is really narrowed that, going basically just an inch wide but a mile deep. So we don't necessarily have 200 to 300 accounts per territory. Our playbook is made up of you can really have 20, 30, 40, 50 accounts in your territory, and you can scale that by rep. So each rep that you hire should only have that many. So that way you can spend a lot more time working with the physician practice staff, and some of those inefficiencies that you're talking about come in the form of insurance barriers and challenges to get the product, the access to the drug. So we have a very streamlined system where if a product is not covered, then there are some partners that we work with to help work with those independent pharmacies and those doctors' offices to make sure that the patient's information gets to the insurance companies, and that's all done through a third party. We at least that's something that needs to be in place. But if they don't get the product because it's still not insurance covered, then we have a very generous patient assistance program where no patient pays over $30 for a month's supply of their medication. Nobody makes money on that. We don't. We give away the product, but it's basically, at least the independent pharmacy gets a dispensing fee, and then that ensures that patient gets the medication. But it's done in a very streamlined fashion, working with local independent pharmacies, whereas a lot of the big corporate pharma company programs for patient assistance take months to kind of apply to and get funding, and there's requirements, and so we kind of make that a lot more streamlined process to make sure the patients get the product they need.
That's fantastic. I mean, the $30 thing, like that's blew my mind. I pay more than $30 for a prescription right now. So the fact that that's even an option out there to be able to take care of the patient at the end of the day, so that pharmacy can keep that person, and likely they're going to have more than one prescription, so they're going to have the capacity to fill multiple things and ultimately help their customer.
Well, and the provider offices are sick and tired of getting calls back from insurance companies saying this is denied, and now you need to switch it to this, and it's a process, and the patients complain, well, this is what really worked for me because you gave me some samples and it works, or I've tried it before. And so they don't get those calls anymore because the independent pharmacies that we work with, and that's another core value of Galt, we really just work with independent pharmacies. We don't work with the big chains, CVS, Walgreens, and nothing against them. I mean, they do serve a need, but they're not going to go the extra mile that's needed to really serve that patient. So because of that, those healthcare providers are hardly going to get a call back from that pharmacy or that patient to say, I couldn't afford the drug. It was because it just got solved for them. And so that encourages them to make sure that, okay, well, I'm satisfied with this process.
You mentioned a little bit ago that there's basically 500 or so territories available throughout the U.S. That number staggered me, to be honest with you. So how large is the opportunity for someone who's wanting to enter the space or wanting to partner with you?
So from Galt's perspective, we're only, I guess, about 15% of the way through, because we've got 60 territories that are activated with sales, activities going on through a franchise partner currently. So that leaves almost 80 to 90% of the country that's still available, white space. We've grown very deliberately smaller. We didn't want to, just go out there and blast it. We've been around since 2018 with the franchise model, so we've really learned quite a bit. As you can imagine, you deal with a lot of franchise systems. It doesn't happen overnight, and so here we are, 8 years later, and now we're really seeing that that ability to scale for our current franchisees, who about 40% of them own multi-territories. So they're scaling their own territories, and that's a proof that it works. They'd be buying more territories because it does work. And so for them, so the question to answer as far as what is the opportunity for an individual franchisee, I mean, we're in markets like pain management, non-opioid pain management drugs, insomnia. These are huge markets that have huge unmet clinical needs. There are patients that are still not being satisfied with what they're on. So the products that we have serve that, as well as our pipeline of products also will address that in the future, as well as those products kind of mature. So the upside is huge for a franchisee coming in today, because it's a huge market within their territory. So it's up to them how they want to scale, whether it's just one rep or 10 reps in that territory to address it across all of their particular zip codes. So the upside's there for them, and then they can kind of grow to additional territories as they see fit.
That's fantastic. Being in the franchise space for as long as I have, like, one of the metrics out there that is not talked about enough, in my opinion, but is a barometer of success for a system, is the reinvestment rate of currencies. And the fact that you guys have that is phenomenal. You're already ahead of the game in reference to a very large percentage of franchise systems out there. So kudos to you and your team, because that just proves the concept.
That's right. And besides that, is not just those same owners, referrals, right? Because a lot of our new franchisees come to us through referrals from our current franchisees, and they're doing that because they want the system to expand. They want Galt overall to be successful, so they're bringing in like-minded entrepreneurs and professionals that they feel could add value to it, and that's obviously a great compliment to us that they would do that. So it's almost like an expansion by a current franchisee.
Certainly, unit economics are always going to be something that is a hot button topic for someone that is looking to invest in a model. They want to get a return on investment and ultimately get a profitability. So what drives profitability in this particular model? Is it number of providers, or is it prescription volume, or like what are those kind of key indicators that tell you if you're successful and head towards profitability?
Yeah, so sales are generated for a franchisee through the prescriptions that they generate that go to a pharmacy within their zip code, and that gets fully completed, it gets to the patient. So it's the volume of prescriptions, of course. New prescriptions is a good barometer of how many prescriptions are generating, and really educating healthcare providers as to what would be valuable for their patients, and getting that prescription to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy actually getting the patient to their product and them being successful on it. But the next barometers are refills. If the drug is doing well, then obviously they're going to get a refill when needed, of course. And so that is definitely one of the drivers. That's the main driver of sales, because as that pharmacy buys more product from Galt, then that franchisee gets the credit for those sales. And so the profitability is then driven on, okay, well, what are your expenses for that? We don't have brick and mortar. You don't need a huge build out as typical franchise systems. You can literally work out of your car. That's your office. And go if you're an owner operator. If you're obviously hiring reps, then you might have an office and where you meet up. And that's if you want that. But basically, your expenses are limited to your own or your sales reps activities. And even the big pharma companies have huge budgets for doing lunches and dinners and speaker programs. Our franchisees aren't really reliant on those things because we're small businesses. They're small businesses. They're going into these healthcare providers saying, I'm a small business, local. I'm not going to be able to feed you the nice big lunches, but I'm here to bring you value and give you education. And yes, I can, bring you coffees and maybe breakfast here and there, just so that way, we can talk and it's all done in a compliant way. But that's been uniquely valuable, and the doctor's offices actually love that because it's like, well, I'm going to help you out. You're like me. I'm a local business. You're a local business. We're going to work together as long as the patient's getting what they need. And so the profitability, I think, is maximized because you're not having to compete with those big pharma companies and their big budgets, because we're going in through a very much strategic and laser approach to those healthcare providers that really want to work with us to really drive care to the patient, as opposed to just, okay, well, who's going to bring me in the next lunch and that kind of thing.
I love it. You want simplicity in revenue and the capacity to scale your incomes, your cash flow, whatever you want to call it, profit. Mm-hmm. And this sounds like a very lean model. I mean, obviously you can choose to have a little bit of overhead expense if you want, but you don't have to. And you can ultimately drive a very strong return as a result of that. So
minimal overhead is the key, because a lot of franchise systems obviously require that. You have to have, the brick and mortar, whether it's food related or hotel or anything. Some of the big home service type of franchisees, they require investments in certain machinery and whatever. So it's really a franchisee that just is going to be their owner operator. They're betting on themselves. Like I said, they're doing well if they work.
Sure. Yeah. Ultimately, your focus becomes pretty clear, right? Drive the behavior either for yourself or your sales rep, track your performance, and just improve the consistency. That's fantastic. And in reference to what you said earlier, just kind of want to double down on it. So obviously getting new prescription is a revenue driver for you, but the refill sounds like the place in which you're creating recurring revenue. Am I thinking through that correctly, or is there another way in which the model creates like a recurring revenue stream?
So yeah, that's interesting. Recurring revenue can really be created two ways. One, because of our system, our healthcare providers become very used to, prescribing the product. So it's creating a habit. It's like with anything else. Healthcare providers, they once they create a habit that this is the product that works for these types of patients with osteoarthritis or mild to moderate musculoskeletal pain or insomnia. Some of the products that we address, it becomes a habit because they regularly prescribe it. And so that in one way it becomes recurring to get new prescriptions if that rapport's been built, but they have to kind of maintain it, just the weekly check-in and everything else. There's not going to be anything that's totally recurring. So you still have to have that account management once you get it going. But yes, the residual from refills are great because that shows the patient likes it and they want more of it, and the pharmacy staying in touch with them. As long as they need it, it's available. So that's going to generate sales without it's almost like compounding interest, right? You've already done the hard part. Now it's kind of continue on.
I love it because there's a lot of franchise systems out there that have recurring revenue through some kind of subscription-based model. This sounds very behavior-based. If the providers continue to prescribe, your revenue is going to continue, but you have to have activity in order to continue to foster that relationship. So that's puts a people element into it. And today's day and age with AI taking over everything, people like talking to humans. Yeah. So this gives you the capacity to do that. That's awesome.
And that human touch is always necessary, because we've heard from sales reps and within the franchisees that, like, if they go away for 2 weeks on a vacation, they're actually missed by their healthcare provider. Like, okay, where'd you go? And if you go for 2 weeks, if you go for 2 months, they'll start forgetting about prescribing. They don't have their, and because they have so much on their mind, and they have to continuously, kind of just do whatever it takes. And if somebody's not there, not just reminding them, but also handling and communicating with the pharmacy to make sure prescription went to the right pharmacy and all of these things, that's just working with the doctor's office. So it's a so business is tough, right? Any business, it's hard to kind of really get going on something if you're not working it on a very regular basis. So that's got to be an essential part of anything. Hate to say that the recurring revenues on that subscription model, even that takes work, because you got to keep them happy, right?
100% agree. I'm sure there's different types of operators within your system. You have, I think you said 60 something territories that are currently active and open and getting revenue. What are the operator kind of traits that showcase a level of success in the model? What are those consistent traits?
Right. So the traits well, first of all, work ethic, right? And willingness to work within a system and the playbook, because it's proven. And that's like with any franchise model. I'm not, saying anything that doesn't work for anything else, but specifically for this particular model, a little bit of healthcare entrepreneurism or healthcare sales is important. If they have that, they're going to be successful a lot quicker. Independent pharmacy owners obviously know their healthcare community. They've already got relationships. They understand prescriptions. That's helpful. But really, again, it's that drive and understanding of how they can connect with people. And so some of the more successful franchisees we've had have been successful salespeople in other arenas, whether it's pharma, medical device, or even, home health. And they're now applying that in their relationships and the ability to really, work with a healthcare provider using that experience. But then they are really dependent on our system, our training, and it's constant training. We have to ensure that they constantly are sharpening their saw. So there's a lot of engagement from us to make sure that we just don't leave them alone. We want to make sure that they're using all the tools that are available to them. So, I mean, the main trait is the commitment, I would say, to the business, and they have to be consistently engaged with us. That's been the number one factor in success within our system. When they're not engaged, or we don't hear from them in a few weeks or even months, then and they've got a sales rep, then they're disconnected, and so they're not going to be successful in the system.
I love it. I love it. And shout out to Sharpen the Saw, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the best books ever written, ever. Fantastic shout out there. I totally agree. You got to be consistently engaged. It's your business. You put money into it. Be engaged. But certainly continue to sharpen the saw, because you always have the capacity to get better in some way, shape, or form, and identify improving it is another level of engagement besides just activity.
That's right. Absolutely.
What are the systems that you had to, I know you all have been around for many years now, but what were those systems originally that needed to be built? Playbooks, training, whatever it was, before you could begin the franchise?
Yeah. So, again, within this particular sector, healthcare in general, but pharmaceuticals for sure, compliance is a huge factor. And the compliance starts with the training, making sure that anybody that's out there going to be promoting our product or touching a sample knows, everything about the product and everything about how it can be left with a provider and documentation. So this training system was the main thing that had to be the core, and that's evolved over time and gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. But also IT and data systems were always had to be there from the beginning for our franchisees to have access to dashboards, to know what they're doing, how they're doing, and have access to information that's going to help them. So those have been building stronger and stronger over time. And then supply chain, right? Systems of getting the product from a warehouse to a pharmacy and to the patient. And that's our pharmacy solutions. And so we've really built out, we've got a great leader who leads our pharmacy solutions group that works with our partner pharmacies, our hub pharmacies, and making sure that prescription, the fulfillment piece and that journey is seamless. And so that system had to be built. Some of it was built from day one, but it really evolve, just like with everything else. Things have changed in healthcare, so we've pivoted. We used to distribute primarily through all the big three wholesalers, McKesson, ABC, and Cardinal, and then have the product show up at any pharmacy in the country. Well, we've changed that to now only working where we sell directly to those independent pharmacies through our 3PL. And that's made a huge difference, and that it took us a few years to get to that, but now that's the only way that we function. But we have a lot more control and into that system of knowing where the product went, which helps the franchisee really understand, where they're generating sales within their territories. The visibility.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Visibility. And visibility is actually kind of where I wanted to go next. Because you also referenced technology was something that had to be created there in the beginning. So what role does tech play in kind of the day-to-day of an owner-operator in your system?
Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing, a lot of pharma companies actually just buy off-the-shelf CRM systems. And there's a lot of great ones out there. But because our system's a little bit unique with franchisees, not sales reps, not employed reps, we've built our own CRM system. So the IT platform that is built on, has obviously all of the data, the targeting data, the ability to input information about visits they've had, the ability to sort of then transition to samples that they may be leaving for a healthcare provider and document that through a compliant way, upload any expenses into the system so that way we can track it, because as a pharma company, we have to track expenses for what's called sunshine reporting for any healthcare provider that gets something of value. We as a pharma company have to document that just to have that in a system for CMS and healthcare. So that's all built into that. That gets reported in. So that's one of our biggest IT platforms. But then we have a dashboard of, just like other franchise systems and also pharma companies, a portal that our franchisees, the sales reps can come to for resources, videos, and anything else that might help them from a day-to-day basis. But just being able to have that in one place, whether it's a mobile device, a computer, any which way, we want them to be totally connected. And so, a lot of people claim to use AI in their businesses and things like that. We don't really claim that because you don't really need it for this. We've built this, and I know I'm sure within that, their AI is being used by individuals to make things a lot more efficient in the way that they might build or code the system, or potentially use the content to summarize information that they might, be able to do that. And that's fine. But, from a technology standpoint, our infrastructure just gets stronger every day. We've got a great team that really continues to make sure that that becomes a continuous build.
That's awesome. Now, pivoting to what vast majority of entrepreneurs don't think about until towards the end, kind of beginning with the end in mind, going back to another 7 habit of highly effective people saying there. Beginning with the end in mind, if you buy into a business, at some point you're probably going to want to exit as well. So from a buyer's lens or resale capacity, what are kind of the due diligence level questions that buyers should be asking if they wanted to buy out a current franchisee?
Okay. For a franchisee, for them to do, they need to make sure, they need to check and see, okay, well, first of all, are the products, feasible, and can those be can there be a market for those, which I think that's easy to check. Then their territory, is it a good territory for them to be able to be successful in? I mean, it's a two-way street, as you know, franchising. We're doing our due diligence. Are you going to be able to kind of be successful too? And we've had to tell some people that this isn't really for you. But the due diligence they should be checking, can I build it according to a business plan? We give business plan templates based on some of these things. We talked about sales volume or prescription volume. You can insert in based on the number of providers, how many prescriptions realistically do I believe I could create new prescriptions per provider per month looking at this data. So they build the business plan. And so the due diligence they should look at is how confident am I to be able to do this and stay committed within the system that's around me and the playbook that's given to me. But then building it to a certain number of volume and EBITDA, obviously, for them to be able to say, okay, in 3 to 4 years, if I wanted to then sell this particular territory, that's now I have equity in because it's a territory and it's got this much EBITDA each year. It's scalable, that if I sell it to somebody else, the sales rep that I've got can go along with it, or an owner operator can come in and run it themselves and take it to the next level if they want to. Then there's a certain value to that. We have had franchisees that have sold and transferred their territories, but so there is that ability. Each franchise agreement is a 5-year agreement, but it's renewable at the end of just like any franchise agreement, based upon their success, and it's a conversation of whether they want to renew it, of course, and whether they've been meeting and being compliant with everything else. So it's there, and like I said, I think for us, what is the growth on that? So that's for franchisee. It's just like I mentioned, we still got 80% of the country to go after, and slowly but surely we're getting after it. And hopefully folks that might hear us today might say, wow, this might be something that is right up my alley, and I should kind of contact, and we'd love to talk to them.
I'm sure there's going to be plenty of those. But I'm curious, you said you've kind of had to say no, really, to some people who have wanted to get into your system. So what were some of those like misconceptions that people had about either the model, how it works, or just kind of the whys as to why you said this isn't a good fit for you?
So to be quite honest, there's been some that have come in the system that just think it's easy money because they're in the healthcare field and they can just kind of leverage that. Well, number one, we've had doctors have wanted to own territories, and we've said, heck no, we can't do that. That's obviously totally against any sort of anti-kickback statutes of physician driving prescription volume. But then there are some that, we don't feel too good about the way they would run the business in a compliant manner. So we've had to say no in a nice way. But then, others just, they're investors, and they see that they can, really make money if they build a business, and they've built businesses in the past. But when we then push them to say, okay, well, who are you going to hire, and how's your business going to be run? They don't have a clear path yet, because they just look at if they can do it, I can do it. And so those are the ones where we don't. The ones that we really encourage are those owner operators, those that have worked in a system before, now are going to quit that job or have been laid off, and they've got a little bit of, funds built up to build their business. Those are the ones that we really look for to grow our system around, because that's kind of what it's built for. Those local entrepreneurs that want to build something better for themselves.
I love it. And building something better for yourself, really the next step of that process. You start with one territory, obviously, but what should operators think about when it comes to multi-unit or multi-territory expansion?
Yeah. So we're pretty strategic about that. We want them to be successful with one, obviously, and two. And sometimes they buy 2 or 3 at the initiation, because they're neighboring territories and they can leverage one rep to manage 2 territories, and that's fine. So we'll look at those. But if it's somebody that's been within the system and they want to expand after 3 months, we'll tell them to hold on a little bit and say, let's really get your feet wet and get going, get through the process, and then let's evaluate whether the timing is right and where you want to expand and how you want to expand. So that's really where our franchise operations team comes into play, to really work with them, onboard them, to make sure that that they're checking all the boxes all the way through, not just the first 90 days and 180 days, but beyond that, to say, okay, well, these guys are really building a great structure. They would be amazing multi territory and expansion candidates. So we want to encourage them. But then there's even a point where we say, well, we don't want one franchisee to be that big either. We want it to kind of go across. So, because if that happens, then we're no different than a corporate pharma company that has somebody that owns 50 territories that they're building it under that model. So it's a balance, right?
Of course, yeah, for sure. And as that balance progresses, kind of forward thinking, where do you see Galt Phranchise System in, let's say, the next 5 years?
So, look, 5 years from now, we're at 60 right now, and we've got 500 territories. I would hope that we're at least halfway through the country. We don't want to expand and say we're going to have the whole country covered. But, 2 to 250 territories is very feasible at the growth rate that we're going at. And that's going to also be driven by the products that we put into the pipeline as well as get and launch, because there with some pretty exciting products we have that will launch to maybe 3 years, that are newer drugs that we think that then would encourage much more interest from that and expand the market. So we see that, and we see, honestly, in 5 years, I would hope that there's also other franchise systems. When we're first to market, one of the biggest compliments you can have is when somebody else builds something similar, because they see that, hey, it's working for them. And we encourage that. I mean, this is not something that, okay, we want to just corner a market on pharma franchising, although we've coined the term PH franchising. But it's open, and there are medical device companies that will look at this. We see a huge responsibility with that, because when you're the first to market, you want to build it the right way. Within healthcare, compliance is a huge, huge factor in how you build a system. And that's why I think franchising in healthcare is important, because you have a system that then you have to play by and you have to document through. Whereas if you're just opening a business, let's say it's a home health business or DME business, and there's a lot of independent owners of those, if they're not working in the franchise system, there's not really guardrails, and there's temptations to kind of go outside of that to say, well, I can get business this way. And it might be, in a gray area from a compliance or even, anti-kickback statutes perspective, but a franchise system is not going to allow for that. So I would hope that more of these cottage industries within healthcare do get into franchising and for building that system for entrepreneurs that need that, as well as, building compliant models around that, because that's what we're committed to do.
100%. And at least at this moment, you are the blue ocean. Maybe somebody else will get in there at some point in the future, but y'all are the one. So I'm pretty confident there's going to be some people listening in the audience. They're like, this sounds like right up my alley. This is what I need. So if that's the case, how do they get into contact with you and your team to begin the process?
Sure. So galtphranchise.com is GALT and then franchise.com. That's the website that they can go to, learn everything there is to know. There's a lot of great news articles on there. There's a lot of information, and it just has the steps laid out. But the first step is to, obviously, just like with any system, fill out that form with the basic information, and obviously somebody's going to reach out to them right away to just basically understand a little bit about what they're looking to do and where they're looking to. There's an interactive map on the site also to show where territories are available. And then as that discussion progresses from that step, there's an application process like others. And that application is more focused on how they would see running their business. And it's kind of part of that due diligence process that we have too. Is this somebody that, will fit well into the system? Because we don't want people to come in that aren't going to be successful. And then from there, they'll get an NDA and the FDD process, just like that. So it's a structured process that they would go through. But then from there, we encourage them to meet a lot of our team. We're based in Atlanta. So we encourage, as the process goes further along, to come here, meet the team, and have more face-to-face before they really do sign on that dotted line. We want to make sure they're 100% committed.
Love it. I love it. Love it. Scroll down in the commentary. We'll have the link to the website so you can check out the interactive map, fill out the form, and begin the process. And potentially your next entrepreneur journey. This has been freaking phenomenal. I've learned so much. I'm not in the healthcare space. I'm not in the pharmaceutical space. So I was looking forward to this personally. I know the audience was as well, but you taught me so much today. So thank you for being on. I know you're super busy. You're running a very large franchise system along with many other things that you do. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on with myself and my audience.
Great, Joe. Thank you. And thanks for what you're doing. I mean, you're spreading the good word about entrepreneurism and how to get into different franchise systems. And so it's much needed. So appreciate what you're doing too. Thank you. And thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you. And to everybody out there, if you're listening to this, thinking about even entering into franchise, please understand this. Not all franchise models create value. The ones that do have clear systems, consistent execution, and operator independence. That's the difference between owning a job and own a transferable asset. If you want help evaluating opportunities such as this, feel free to visit our website, twinflametx.com, or apply for our advisory roles, and we will be happy to assist you in any way, shape, or form. I'm Joe Carter, and this has been the Franchise Growth Show. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye, everybody. Boom. What's the thing, Barry? Yeah, we're good. It's stopping as we, yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So it's pretty much finished. It says 99.9%, so I'm sure it's pretty much done. With the upload, give it just a little off to process, and then I will take the raw footage, put it in a Google Drive folder. I'll send that over to you, and then as my team creates the post-production assets, we'll put it in that same folder as well, so that you and your team can leverage them in any way, shape, or form that you would like.